Hi guys! So today's video is going to be my February wrap-up. I read a total of 7 books this month. I started another book and got about halfway through it. Wasn't the biggest fan of it. And then I started reading an ebook, and I'm just really bad at finishing ebooks because when it's on my computer, I get distracted by other things. Still though, 7 books is a good reading month for me, especially because a lot of these books were kind of longer. For those people out there that read like 13 to 20 books in a month, you guys are ridiculous. You're awesome, but there's definitely a part of me deep down inside that's like, I bet they didn't comprehend things as much as I did. I know that's completely false, but I just have to tell myself that because I'm super jealous that there are people out there that can read that fast. That being said, the first book I read, I buddy read with That Bookie and Brian Bookland, whose channels I will link down below, and that book is A Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. These books follow a notorious assassin named Selena, who's the chick that's always on the covers, and I enjoyed the first one, but I definitely enjoyed this second one a lot more. I've heard that the pattern of these books getting better as they go continues, and that the third one is even better than the first two, but I gotta say, when I got done reading this, I almost made a video of just me ranting about why the main character was driving me crazy. I didn't end up making that video because I figured it's the second book in a series and I don't want to exclude people who haven't even started the series yet. But if you guys have read it, let me know in the comment section down below so I can rant to somebody. The next book I read was the fourth Falling Kingdoms book, which is Frozen Tides by Morgan Rhodes. These books are kind of like my guilty pleasure reads because they're very YA. There's tons of angst between the characters. All the characters are teenagers basically, but the plot is really interesting. There's a lot of political intrigue that's weaved together, and I kind of just, I don't know, I like them. I really hate comparing things to Game of Thrones because that seems to be the popular thing to do now, but these books really are like if Game of Thrones were for teenagers. The next book I read was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. Okay, I have a whole book review for this book, but oh man, it just destroyed me. I went into it thinking like, oh, it's YA, it's gonna be cutesy, it's the villain origin story to the Queen of Hearts, but it's probably gonna be laced with happiness deep down. No, that is not what it was at all. I mean, it was cutesy in that it had a lot of whimsy to it because it is a fairy tale, and Marissa Meyer's writing was really wonderful. She incorporated a lot of that whimsy into the writing itself, but this story, like, you know what's gonna happen. You know it's gonna go downhill, but you just don't think it's gonna go as downhill as it ends up going. Which, of course, resulted in me loving it, because I think when authors aren't afraid to have, you know, stuff hit the fan, that's when writing is its best. It's definitely a downer, but it's really, really good. Next, I read all 3 of the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. The plot of these books is about a guy named Kel, who's what's known as an Antari, which is a person that can travel between parallel worlds, specifically parallel Londons, and that plot alone I thought was so cool. I had been wanting to read them for a while, and then when I found out that the third one was coming out in February, I decided to just take the plunge and read all 3 of them that month, which was a good decision because they're really good books. And I mentioned this in my last video, but I'm going to be meeting V.E. Schwab at a book signing at a bookstore in my area, so I'm even more excited that I decided to read all these books. I have reviews for actually every single book that I've mentioned so far, but I actually have 2 separate reviews for these. I have a book review for the first one, and then I have a book review for the whole series, but you don't have to have read any of them to watch either of the reviews. I don't spoil anything in any of my reviews, so if you're interested in any of the books I've mentioned, I will leave a link in the description bar down below. The next book I read, I don't have a book review for because I'm waiting until I read all 3 of the books in the trilogy, and that would be the first book of the Grisha series by Leah Bardugo. I read this between reading the second and the third of the Darker Shade of Magic series because I was waiting for my book to get delivered to me. So I was like, oh, I'll pick this up and I'll try to read some of it before I get that, and then I ended up reading the whole thing in basically a day. I enjoyed the first book. I thought it was a good first book in that I can tell it's leading up to events later in the series, which is exciting because I sometimes feel like that's what first books should do. Too often I find first books feel as if the author didn't know if the publisher was going to pick them up for sequels. So the first book kind of feels like its own thing, and then the second book feels like a setup for the rest of the series. That was not the case at all with this book. I think Leigh Bardugo recognized that she was going to need to take 3 books to tell this story, and that's what she did. The first one is a little introductory. It's a little bit of a leveling up book, and that the character kind of discovers that she has magical abilities and then has to learn how to use those magical abilities at this school for the Grisha. But she's a little bit of an outsider and she hasn't quite discovered the potential for her power yet. So I'm excited for in the future when I think maybe that power is going to get tapped into a little bit more. Okay, so the book I didn't finish, and by choice didn't finish, was Wizards of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin. It's not that this book is bad by any means. It follows a young boy named Jed, and it kind of travels with him as he becomes this powerful wizard. But for me, this book felt a lot like an old-timey kind of fantasy book in that I could picture like a grandpa telling a story to his grandson before bed. Hopefully that makes sense. It wasn't really, for me, it didn't hold my attention because I like stories that are very character-driven. I like feeling like I can feel the characters' emotions and understand everything they're going through, and in this book, it felt more like somebody was telling me a story. It's the first book in a long time that I've just kind of decided, I don't think I'm going to finish this, and I feel awful doing that to books, but there are so many other books I want to read, and I just feel like it puts me in a bit of a reading slump to force myself to read something if I'm not 100% invested in it. Anyway, after not finishing that book, I had one more book to read, but I was still kind of in a reading slump, so I didn't finish it, but I plan to, and that would be the book Murder in Absentia by Asaph Mayer. I really didn't get far at all, so I can't say a ton about the book, but I can let you know that the synopsis, it's basically about a guy known as Felix the Fox who is kind of like a Sherlock Holmes character in a fantastical Roman-esque world. Anyway, there you go, guys. Those are all the books that I read or got around to reading part of in the month of February. If you're interested in any of these books, I will have my book reviews for the ones that I have up in the description bar below, and as always, I'll have links to these books in case you want to get them for yourself. As always, if you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos, and check out some more of my videos right over here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!